Let's start. So good morning, everyone, and welcome to this webinar. My name is Mathias Sevin, and I will be your host for this event. Turning Windows applications into software as a service solution can sometimes be challenging. Whether you create your own applications using Gupta Team Developer or you bought custom solutions, you may need to overcome challenges to turn them into SaaS applications. How to migrate your existing environment to the cloud. How to maintain access to the business applications anytime, anywhere, and with the same security and usability levels. OpenText delivers all solutions to help organizations smoothly transition to the cloud. OpenText Migrate helps you smoothly migrate existing servers, data, and applications to the cloud. Using Migrate, Team Developer applications and SQL-based databases can be moved easily to the cloud environments. OpenText Exceed TurboX provides fast and resilient remote access to cloud environment. The administration features of ETX allow to deploy application to users via a simple web interface. The security and reporting features also enable usage-based pricing for SaaS solution if required. Then, once in the cloud, OpenText availability can protect your SaaS solution by implementing a high availability infrastructure. In this webinar, you will learn how to move servers, data, and application to the cloud. Enable remote access to Gupta Team Developer applications. Protect your SaaS cloud infrastructure by creating an always up-to-date clone with automatic failover. But before we start, a few housekeeping items. The recording of this webinar will be available shortly after the event. Throughout the presentation, please feel free to ask your question using the Ask a Question button on the top right of your screen. We'll get to them at the end of the presentation. You can also check our product pages on opentext.com for more information. With this, I would like to introduce you, our presenters for today's webinar. Please welcome Martin Titz, Product Marketing Manager, who will deliver the solution overview, and my colleague from the Solution Consulting team, Helmut Reimann, who will be demoing the various solution. Without further ado, Martin, up to you.
Thank you very much, Matthias. And here is the agenda for today's webinar. We will go through the SaaS benefits and also the challenges of implementing a SaaS solution. We will see how you can migrate existing apps and databases to the cloud. We will give you an overview of the OpenText Migrate benefits. We will give you a live migration demonstration. Then we will move to remote access for Gupta Team Developer applications using OpenText Exceed TurboX, including a live demo again. And the third part of this webinar is implementing high availability for the cloud for a cloud infrastructure using OpenText availability, using the failover functionality of availability. Let's get started. So what are the SaaS benefits and challenges? The benefits are you have subscription pricing. You have a very predictable monthly cost. We have flexible usage periods versus perpetual live purchase. So you are far more flexible with less investments. The application infrastructure is maintained by the publisher, so by the software house in this case. The user will always have the latest and greatest software, patches, updates will be installed by the software house. There are no IT resources required at the user side to manage the remote access. Backup services, etc. are included, so you don't need to care how to back up SQL-based databases or how to back up other documents of your application. You have no client-side installation, very easy remote access. As Matthias said, you just click on a button in a browser and you can start your Team Developer application from anywhere in the world. But what are the challenges? You might think, how do I get my software environments to a data center or the cloud? So you might not necessarily need to use a cloud environment, but I'm sure you might have your own data center where you want to host your software SaaS solution. So how do I get my data into the data center and the cloud? Will my users be happy with access performance and usability? Will my far away remote users be happy with access performance? So let's say you have users in Germany or Germany, Austria, Switzerland, and Netherlands maybe, but then you add users in Australia. Will they have the same good performance if you're running from a different continent, for example? Does my remote access infrastructure scale? Can I immediately add like 100 or 1,000 new employees if I buy a new company? Is my remote access infrastructure safe? Data protection, things like that. And the last thing is, how can I ensure ultimate availability? How do I make sure that even in case of natural disasters or other things, I can always provide an always-on experience for my SaaS solution? So the first part is migrating existing apps and databases to a data center or to the cloud. Let's have a look at OpenText Migrate. So this is what OpenText Migrate does. It makes migrations easy, much like SQLbase is an easy database. OpenText Migrate provides real-time byte-level asynchronous replication. And you can migrate an entire server. You can migrate just the data, just the application, or both the data and application, or any combination of those. So it's you can configure all that, and Migrate will do the migration for you. And it's your task to decide when you think you are ready to migrate. So if you continue with the source system, all the changes that are ongoing will be replicated to the target system. OpenText Migrate. You have any-to-any migrations. You can migrate from any combination of physical, virtual, and cloud platforms. So you're very, very flexible in migrating virtual machines, or from physical to virtual, from physical to virtual cloud, from physical to physical cloud, and whatever you want to migrate, we can do that. You have real-time byte-level replication. So you have, as I mentioned before, it just keeps on synchronizing your data. And when you are ready, then you can pull the switch and turn the target system on. So, and all the changes in that period from the initialization of the replication to the point where you go live with the target system, all the changes on the source system will be on the target systems. You have point-to-point migrations, including AES 256-bit encryption. That's the same encryption level that SQLbase delivers, so that is possible as well. So nobody can sneak in and read what's going on over the network. It gives you flexible deployments because you can quickly change your vendors. You're not locked into any hypervisor, any cloud vendor, or any hardware. You can use Migrate to move to your best environment anytime. Simple migration management. You have an easy-to-use user interface that makes it really easy to orchestrate your migration, and Helmut will show that in a few minutes. You also have a comprehensive SDK that you can use to basically trigger and configure the migration from a program. So you could basically use Team Developer to create your own migration tool using the migration API of this Migrate tool. And with that, I'd like to hand over to Helmut for the demonstration of OpenText Migrate.
Okay, perfect. Many thanks. So the plan for today is, first of all, I want to give you an overview about my my target for today. So I have a planned scenario. At least I have a customer side. On this customer side, I have a customer server. On this customer server, a few people are connected, a few clients are connected, running maybe a team developer application, we have a printer in use, and so on. And during my presentation and my demo, I want to get everything into the cloud or into a data center. That means at least we need some smart tools to get this done. I know from a few customers, if they have to set up a server, if they have to move from maybe an older version of the server to a better hardware, they need at least 2, 3, 4, 5 days or a week at least to get everything done. Also, sometimes the users are blocked because at least users are working with a database, users create maybe files, and everything is more and less flexible on server side. So the plan is to get everything done in the background so that the user is not blocked during the migration of an existing server on customer side to a data center or to a cloud. On top, we need a secured access to the server. That means I want to send only a link and the login credentials to a special client, to a user. He clicks on the link, a browser opens, he gets his profiles, so his shortcuts to the application or to a desktop, and then he can run at least this application inside the cloud environment. On top, we need a smart backup system. That means we want to reuse at least the Carbonite migration software. We want to add a special license code. With this license, we can do a live backup system. That means we use the same technology for migrating the server for the high availability of the server. That means if we do a change on server side, we get it immediately also on the backup side. So the first step, what we want to do is we want to migrate the existing customer server into the cloud or into a cloud environment. And Martin mentioned before, we can do any-to-any migration. That means if the cloud provider gives you only access to maybe a virtual machine, like Azure or some other environments, you can directly migrate to this environment. Or you can create back from a virtual machine back to a physical hardware. Like if you have on your customer server, if you have different virtual machine, you can migrate easily every virtual machine to a physical server on cloud side. So it's also used inside a company to migrate existing software or existing servers onto a special new hardware. And let's start with looking into our environment. As you can see, I have two servers. On the left-hand side, I have my current machine for my customer environment. So if I run my application, you can see my application starts. I can log into my application, type in my password, and my application starts, and everything is fine. I want to migrate this application, the whole server, into the client environment, into a new for my client environment, into a new server environment on Azure side. For example, on the right-hand side, you can see a cloud server. I have installed on this cloud server a piece of software called Carbonite Migrate. Carbonite Migrate is pretty straightforward software. So you can download Carbonite Migrate, you can install Carbonite Migrate. And the first step, what you have to do is you have to add server or the server names or the server IP addresses. That's pretty straightforward. So you can click on add server, type in the IP address, the username and the password of the administrator, and then you will see at least the servers inside the list. What you need at least on server side, on the new server, on your maybe cloud environment or your data center, you have to install a software, the operating system, and you can use Carbonite on a special server. You can install it on the server and you can do a remote installation because you need at least on all the servers which should be migrated and where you want to install the high availability, you need at least a client of Carbonite, of the Carbonite software. Then you get the list of the current servers, and with this current servers, you are able now to set up some jobs. A job is nothing else than looking into the environment. That means, for example, I have a job created CAS server to cloud server. So I want to create and to move my existing client server on the left-hand side to the cloud. And I can set up all the different steps, what I need at least. I don't want to dig too deep into the details, that we need maybe 1 hour to get this done, but some very important settings like a compression, because we want to transfer now and we want to mirror an existing server into the cloud. That maybe needs 20 hours, 70 hours, 70 whatever hours, because the whole disk, all the applications and so on, the databases and so on are transferred in the first step, really one-to-one to the new server. On top, we start the replication process. That means if you do a change on your current client server, it will be automatically done also on the server inside the cloud. If you need additional information, if you want to add special, let's say, file system parts and so on, or if you want to exclude file system parts, you can use the right-hand click or link, and you can say, I need, for example, the old deployment of Team Developer is not needed. I need a newer one and so on. So you can choose what should be mirrored. It's the first step to the cloud server. Also, what you can do is, it's heavily used to limit the bandwidth. So at least you don't want to block any user on your client side. So the user can still work with application, and maybe you have a really massive server and a lot of disk and a lot of people are working with the database and so on. Then it makes sense to limit the bandwidth. That means you can say, I need only the bandwidth of 2 gigs or whatever your bandwidth is, bytes per second, or you can schedule the limits. That means do the mirroring of the existing server only during the night after working hours. So this is very, very flexible. If you click on next, every option and every setting is checked, and you get at least this job running. And you can see the activity for the server. Job type is a full server. I want to have a full server migration. I have now reached the condition for the failover. And what I can see is everything is done. I skipped some parts, at least 65 megabytes or 66 megabytes or gigabytes. This is operating system. So the operating system is not needed. What we are doing, we set up for the user environment a special file system is called a staging folder. So every user environment, registry entry, application, and so on, is copied into a staging folder. And during restart and take over of the new server, we copy this information into the live operating system. So in this case, you can see in my environment, Helmut Reimann desktop, I have a few files. So like greetings, GG, and hello. If I do something, first of all, I open that one. You can see, hey, Martin and Ines, have a nice day, Helmut. So this morning, I was aware that Matthias is doing the welcome for today's webinar. So I can go into the greetings on my source system. I can change to Matthias. Matthias. Make it correct. Save. Let's have a look into our new system. It's still Ines. And after a few seconds, you will see we have Matthias. So the replication is done. So at this point, there's no takeover. So we don't have a takeover for the new server, but everything what I'm doing on my original server is also done on the new server. If I create a new text document, typing the name of a text document, you will see is automatically over here. Here we have the new document. If I open the document, if I do something with the document, write something in, I save it again. It takes maybe a second because I don't know where our data center is, but you can see there's no new information inside my text. With SQL Base, I'm pretty sure you want to ask later on what's going on with SQL base. So what we are doing a byte-level replication. That means if you open a file and you change only 1 byte inside the file, we do the same on the target side. That means we don't move the whole document to the target server. What we do is only we replace this byte inside the file. This is the same for SQL-based applications. So if we do something, if the database is writing something into the database or does an update and delete and insert whatever, we do the same on the byte level on the target file, also on the logs and so on. The very important to know is that the database engine on the new target system should not run, because then you get corrupted pages and so on. So at this point, this is really a one-to-one copy of the DBS file and of the log files. So there's no need to do all these transactions again. So if this is done and we have at least these stages inside our replication process, if the job is done, if you get a green mark and so on, then we can do the failover or cut over. In this case, it's not a failover because we want to stop now the existing customer server. We want to take over this information. That means the new server gets the same information, IP address, name, and so on, as the previous one. Let's have a look before we start with this migration process or with this takeover. We have a look into our environment and you will see the staging folder. Inside the staging folder, you see the users, like my environment. You will see all the Windows information. You will see the program files and so on. So this is really the pre-setup for the new machine. So if we do a restart, if we do the failover or takeover, then this gets valid. So before I hand over to Martin again to explain a little bit more about ETX, I do and start the process to restart my environment. Back to you, Martin.
Thank you very much, Helmut. So, and then while the cutover happens in the background now in the cloud, I'd like to talk about OpenText Exceed TurboX, which is the remote access or remote desktop software that we have that can be used for remote accessing software as a service solutions. So, Exceed TurboX is fast remote access for Windows and Linux software and remote desktops. Why do I say software and remote desktops? Because you can have just the Team Developer application to be remote, and that application runs as if it would be local. So if you are used to using a certain application locally and you run it then remotely, you wouldn't necessarily even notice that it's now running remotely because you don't have the entire remote desktop around it that you get with other remote desktop environments. So remote access benefits of ETX. Access any Windows and Linux software or any Windows and Linux desktop from anywhere and from any platform to totally secured IP. We talk a bit more about that later. Central management, so you have a central management console where you configure everything for your users and applications and infrastructure. You can foster collaboration because you can share screens not only between two users but in teams of users, and of course with IT or with service provider software houses that can check what's going on to troubleshoot issues if there should be some. With Exceed TurboX, you can centralize software running on Windows, Linux, and Unix, and users can access the centralized software via Windows, Linux, macOS, iPadOS, and soon with an HTML5 browser client. So what's different about ETX? Very good performance and bandwidth usage. That's the heritage that this product has. It has been very fast since 20 years or so. So we have a lot of knowledge of making remote access really fast. So it should really work. It really works actually with customers having one ETX or one environment, one infrastructure on one continent, and all other continents can access that with very good performance. Central administration and management, you can manage users, activities, and everything. Very stable and high security. high availability, load balancing, encryption, and data protection. You have mixed Windows and Linux, Unix environments for your servers if you need those. You have sharing and collaboration features, so you can share what you're doing with other users. You can discuss an issue you have and find solutions to that work problem you have in a shared screen session with multiple users. So here's how it works. You have on the left side, you have the clients, laptops with Windows, macOS, and iPadOS, as I mentioned. And the remote worker uses a network connection to a data center, to an office, to the cloud, or any combination of those. And the ETX server and connection nodes, these guys here basically take the screen contents, compress the screen contents, encrypt the screen contents. So compressed and encrypted screen contents are being sent to the client. And we are really very good in making that very, very fast. So as I mentioned before, if you're using that application mode, so that only the application is being shown on the desktop of the user, it might actually get faster. Because the cloud servers might be faster than the user's desktop computer before. In the data center, you also have the application servers. Those then will run SQL-based. They will run the team developer applications, and you can scale them as you need. And let's talk a bit about ETX for the user. There's a web dashboard which allows access from anywhere. You see a screenshot at the bottom right side there. You have large icons for the applications and desktops that you have access to. Just click on one. You will be presented with the login window if required, and then you can run your application or remote desktop. Collaboration, multi-user session sharing, also session handover. So if you are running a session and somebody else in another time zone should take over that session after you end your work time, then that can be done. If allowed, you can copy files to and from the server with drag and drop, but also with a file transfer tool. That can be configured in the user or group settings so that if you don't want users to have local files, which I think is a good idea, if you use such a model, then they won't be able to do that. They won't be allowed to do that. The same is true for the clipboard. You can copy the remote clipboard to the local clipboard and vice versa, but only if allowed to. So you can avoid users stealing data from your data center if you need that kind of protection for your intellectual property. So you have very small footprint platform clients on Windows, macOS, Linux, and iPadOS. And as I mentioned, in summer this year, we will have that new HTML5 client, which will basically run in any browser. So you can use any device that you have to connect to your remote team developer solution. Now speaking a bit about administration. So the SaaS solution providers, they need security and application assignment. So when they manage security, they can use, for example, Active Directory as their authentication provider. They could even import Active Directory users and groups to manage the ETX users. We do have many other authentication options, including two-factor authentications, smart card authentication, and many other things. You can manage users and group in this ETX dashboard. You can manage applications and desktop profiles. Those are basically the icons that the users then see on their dashboard. And you can manage app deployments to users and groups. So you can say, I have a group of financial users, they get the financial application assigned, and that would be a few clicks to do that. And I have the technical users, they get the technical application assigned and things like that. So application servers. In your infrastructure for your software as a service solution, you need application servers. In our case now that Helmut has prepared and is demonstrating today, we are using the Azure cloud, but it can be any cloud or any data center or your own machines on your own site that you are managing. And we the application servers basically are nodes in ETX. So you see a number of nodes on that screenshot here, 2, and then you have node groups where you can combine several nodes into a node group, and those node groups then offer load balancing, for example, and scalability. And you can easily add new machines if you see that you need to onboard new customers, for example. And then SaaS solution providers managing the infrastructure. You don't want your administrators sit there all day monitoring the environment. You want the environment to tell the administrators if there are conditions that make it necessary to take action. For example, low space on application servers, low space on the ETX server itself, which is the web server that displays that, that interface. Memory low, CPU utilization too high, so you might need to add additional application servers because the user experience isn't great anymore. Machines unavailable, so if machines have gone down, we all know that happens in the Windows world. It happens in the IT world, I shall say. Then you have reporting, detailed usage reports, and licensing. You see all the available licenses that you have, and it's actually a license pool. So if somebody logs out, then that license will be available to others. For example, that's quite handy for 24-hour around the world usage. So Gupta Team Developer SaaS solutions. You get a full service SaaS offering for your customers. You get constant monthly revenue. You have better control over solution deployment and usage. For the end users, so the customers of the software houses, you get responsive applications. You can work from anywhere and any device. No customer IT resources required. And for the SaaS solution providers, you have centralized administration. You have a very secured environment and faster response times because you got everything under control from one dashboard. And with that, I'll hand back to Helmut, who will show you what has happened now, and will show you ETX as well.
Yeah. Okay. What I can see now, I got my server to work. So my server is back again, and it has the same name, and we have the same files. And if we look into our environment to make sure that everything was correctly done, we can find also the information inside the environment. The staging folder is gone, so we at least have all the things done inside our server environment. So let's have a look into our dash, maybe into our folders, not folder section, it's the wrong keyboard. Let's have a look into our environment. That means if you look into our file system, you will see, here we go, that we have again the environment, everything is set up, so the server is still running. We have a registry dump. What does it mean? So at least we have had a staging folder with all the users' information. All this information from the current server, from the old source server, is now on the target server. That means you get all this information now inside this environment. On top, we do a registry dump because maybe you want to go back to the server because you want to change some settings, because you want to add additional file systems and so on. So you can go back to any time. So at least we need a clean registry for that. But now you can see everything is now on the new server. And the server name is the same, the IP address is the same, and so on. So there's no change between the old and the new one. And now we want to access to the server. Martin mentioned a good point is, and the starting point is to look into our ETX environment, to our secured access to the server. It doesn't make any sense to use, for example, freeware tools like VNC or AnyDesk because these are really hackers' friends. So you need a real good and secured environment. And also you need different access levels for the users. So if I switch again, if I log out from my server, I have to log into my Exceed TurboX environment. That means at least I have to use my password credentials. Helmut Reimann, my passwords, and so on, so I can sign in into my environment. And at this point, you can see my two profiles for this demonstration. So before we start looking in and start this application, some words about ETX, about how to ship solutions to special user groups or to users. The easiest way is if an administrator has access to the server manager. Inside the server manager, you can see the different servers. The red one shut down, so I have only my TDM1 running, my TD customer A. So this is pretty cool because at least if I run a special environment, the TD cust R is also the old one from before we start migrating to the new one, to the web or into the cloud or into the data center. And we need this later on because if we do a failover, if we need maybe the high availability server, then we don't have to change something inside the node section because the new server, the backup server and so on, gets the information about the TCP IP address and the name of the server. So there's no need to change something. On top, we have some user profile information, like my name. I have full admin access. That means I can change and I can add new servers to the environment. I can also add new users. And if you look into the applications, we get a long list of applications which are available on the different servers. So there's also possible to scan a server for installed applications. So I get a list, for example, installed is Office, installed is maybe a special database access, installed is Team Developer, maybe SQL Doc Plus, and so on. So you get a list of published application. And you can assign special published application to a special user. So we want to go back into our dashboard. That is the dashboard for my applications. So the easiest way to provide applications to a user is to send him a link. That means this link from this dashboard, and he can open the link of this dashboard inside a browser. Then you have to send him his login credentials. So the user want to log in, and during the first time of the login, you will be asked about the user and the password, and you can save it and store it. But the best way is always to type it in for security reason. If we look onto a special button, we have the possibility to launch this application, and we have the possibility to look into this information or into the settings. So let's have a start and launch an application. So what we do, we start now the application on server side, and we get a container, and the application starts inside the container. Highly secured. You don't need at least a VPN or something like that. So you need only to type in the information, and now the application starts. And this application is running now somewhere else. I don't know where. So it's the performance is very, very good. What else? If I stop my application, I can say I want to terminate it. So at this point, my process on server side will be stopped. I can suspend also my application. That means if a long running process, like do an unload of a massive database, I can start it in the evening. I can say, okay, it is still running, and I can take over this process at home, on my computer at home, or later on maybe on a tablet PC by running the HTML5 client. So this is really hardware independent. So any application, like Team Developer application, can in the future can also run on a tablet. For administrator or for a developer, maybe it makes sense to have the whole desktop loaded for this user. It's the same. I start my desktop, my ETX client starts, and hopefully, yeah, it starts. And you can see, hopefully in a few seconds, my desktop. So this is the whole desktop. It asks me because I'm an administrator, what's going on, why it's not running, and so on. But at least you will see I have my Team Developer 7.4, and I have my SQL base, and I have my complete environment of my IT infrastructure on server side. And again, I can go and can say I want to suspend the session. And if I go home, I can take over the session. Also, what is possible is to resume it, bring it back to my live environment. So here we go. Here we are back to our server. And now I can do a terminate and sign out. If we look into the setup, that's pretty easy. To set up an application, it means we have a remote start. So this is a Windows application on a special server. This is my login credentials, and this is the executable path, and that's it. And also some very useful information is to set up the printer, redirecting of printer, or maybe I want to switch on the local drive C because I want to store my user environment, the settings and so on of the application inside my user environment. So these are different options inside my environment to set up the user's environment, but it's only for administrators. So if you're not an administrator, you cannot change the settings. And inside the advanced mode, for example, inside the startup, inside the inputs, we have also the possibility, let me see, security settings, to the screen settings, the performance. You can do a balancing and so on, file and printer settings, copy and paste, switch on, switch off. And in general, you can also upload and define special icons for your application, so the user can also use this environment. And on top, you can create also shortcuts on your desktop. That means this is the same technique like running a local application. You create a desktop icon, and if you log in into your environment, automatically the application starts on server side. You will see the rendered information inside your desktops and so on. So there's no difference between normal work on a local computer or a remote computer, on a cloud server or cloud environment. And of course, you can do all these customizations, like at this point, I type in my business application demo and so on. So you can inform users about the special status of the environment, like it's on maintenance during the weekend and so on and so on. So there are different options. And on top, before we go ahead with our high availability, I want to introduce our web API. So for Gupta fans, for Team Developer fans, it's pretty nice to automate everything. That means to do the migration to the web and also to set up the user's environment for ETX. So at this point, a new customer comes to you and tells you, I want to use your software as a service, and you can do everything automated. That means create a server, copy the database as an empty database, set up the environment, set up the users, and then you can pass this information directly via email to the client, send out an invoice. Here is your environment, please start. Martin, to you.
Thank you again, Helmut. Let me share my screen. Okay, so this is the last step in this webinar, implementing a high availability infrastructure for the cloud setup that you have. The product for that is called OpenText Availability. And let's talk about that. So how to ensure availability concerns you. We all know Murphy's Law is a fact. IT things break all the time. And it's always a surprise, where it happens. Plus many other outage sources like natural disasters, too much rain, fires, ransomware, planned downtime, and ransomware on the right side you see takes 22% of outages, which is really bad. So things like AnyDesk should really be avoided. How do I protect myself from IT outages and the severe impacts these have on a business? Reduced productivity, unable to process orders, severe financial impact, reputation, etc. Maybe you saw that a few weeks ago, a data center burning in France, I think it was, and you don't want to have that happen and at the same time not have a backup infrastructure in place or have any backup in place. And that's what we are going to talk about now. High availability HA provides the best recovery point objective. So, the latest data point using synchronization or replication, and the best recovery time objective, because the recovery, the recovered data will be available very, very soon again. So both things are in very good shape here. If you do disaster recovery with backup, then your backup has happened like an hour before, maybe the day before, so you lose data, and then you need hours and hours and hours to install and backup. And high availability in that environment that we present you, it just takes the time of a server to reboot, so anything between 5 and 10 minutes maybe. And then the standby backup server will be available for the users without any changes. And Helmut has already shown part of that, where the new server takes over the IP address and things like that. So protect your data center, implement HA, avoid single points of failure. You can synchronize data centers to another data centers to the cloud, cloud to cloud, any to any. So all the options are open for you. And OpenText availability, just like Migrate, allows you to migrate just the data, just the operating system, just the applications, or any combination of those. And with that, I give back to Helmut for the final demonstration of the high availability technology we have.
So for now, you are responsible if you are going to the cloud, if you do software as a service. You are responsible not only for one customer, you are responsible maybe for hundreds of customers with thousands of users, because maybe you have in your data center, in your cloud environment, hundreds of server migrated. You have a centralized replication process. That means you want to offer special versions to special users, like you want to roll out a new version of your software. You can do that with Carbonite Migrate or Carbonite High Availability. That means you can add special file systems, special environments, special users, and then you can, for example, do a rollout automatically to all customers by starting the different jobs for the different environments. So this can also be used and orchestrate to get all the new updates to the customer side. Like you want to do a rollout, but only for customer A, B, and C, and a special version to customer D. It can be done by creating different jobs, and you can do it from one centralized application from the Carbonite environment. So you saw this environment. We could remotely connect to this environment. But what happens if this server on the cloud or inside the data center has a problem? At least we can reuse our Carbonite environment. So I have defined a Carbonite backup system. And you will see that it's the same and the same technology as for migrating the complete server into the cloud. It's the same tool, so it's still Carbonite, but I used a different license. If you look into the license, it's now double-take availability. That means the availability gives us the possibility to run this process really for years and whatever. So we have all ways to add a few servers. I did some more servers and so on. We have to set up some jobs. At this point, we do a customer server to a cloud backup. Again, customer server is now the old one from client side, now on the server side, on the cloud side, inside the data center. It gets the same name, the same IP address, and so on. So it's still the customer server, no change. But what we do is now we set up the migration process, or not the migration process, it's the replication process. So it's protecting and it's still idle. That means I have again a green mark. That means we have really a one-to-one copy, byte by byte, on our server side. And if we do again a change, maybe you remember this file, we do it something again, we save it, and we can go over here. And no, that was the wrong click. over here, then you will see the same situation. If we open this, we get an additional line. If we, for some reason, we close that one, and if we delete this file, oops, this was the wrong one, but it doesn't matter. File, save. So if we, for example, here's my file again, because nothing is lost, because I did something on the source side and I get back the information on server side. I can set also up some breakpoints. That means, for example, I can take a snapshot. Maybe I get an attack from a virus, whatever, so I can also define a snapshot. I can manage my snapshots. I can go back. I can do a reverse migration and so on. So you can see I have my file over here. If I delete my file, it's also gone in a few seconds. Here we go. So the process is also protecting my whole environment. So it's really, again, a one-to-one copy of my existing server, but it's not active. So if I have a problem with my existing server, it shuts down or has a problem, then automatically the backup server starts and runs some scripts, for example, to start the database engine for SQL base. Because again, if we do a copy of the DBS file, the database engine should not run. If not, you get a corrupted database because the database engine is doing something with the database and so on. So at least if we do a backup, if we do a recovery process, if we want to start the backup, if we shut down the existing server, the backup server gets the original server, it starts, it takes maybe 10-15 minutes. And after that, everyone can work without any data loss. Martin, back to you.
Thanks again, Helmut. So we are approaching the end of this webinar. So this is what we presented to you today. So with OpenText Migrate, you can move your servers, application, and data to the cloud, including SQL-based and Team Developer applications. So that was our first demonstration. OpenText Exceed TurboX provides fast remote access to Windows applications and remote desktops. That was our second demo that Helmut did. And with OpenText availability, you can create a standby infrastructure that can kick in immediately in case of IT disasters. And with that, I'd like to open it for questions and answers.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Martin and Helmut, for this inspiring and comprehensive presentation. We do have, in fact, few questions on the Q&A panel. So I will start with the first one. I guess this is probably a question for one of you guys. Can a software house use ETX to help Team Developer SaaS users with technical issues? So can you basically use the ETX solution for technical support sessions?
I guess I can
Helmut?
answer that. Yes, I can answer that.
Yeah.
So at least yes, definitely yes, because a special user, if he runs into an issue, if you want to need, or if he needs support and so on, can share his screen, his environment, maybe with a technical person, with a developer or support guy. So they can share the same look and feel. They can do something like in teams. So that means they can collaborate and get to try out to find out what's going wrong, and also to look into the environment, to do the right settings. Maybe also you can use it as a training center. So for online training, so you can share screens, you can collaborate, and forced to work as a team. So I guess it's a good solution for that.
Good, thank you. Another question, I guess, for you, Helmut. Can Migrate sync the Team Developer deployment file and the Team Developer executables?
Yes, I can. What the best way is, or one possible way is to set up your environment as a developer. So at least one time you have an executable, you have a new version. Maybe you have to upload also a special deployment of Team Developer because you get some fixes from OpenText. So you can use, for example, you can use Carbon Migrate or OpenText Migrate to do all the rollout for the different software packages. So you can definitely check on, check off different file systems to provide finalized applications, finalized changes, and so on to the different servers or environments inside the cloud or inside the data center. So you can really use the OpenText replication or migration tool. It's the same, at least. It's only the difference, only the license key to do all these deployments and so on.
Okay, good. And I guess similar question for SQL base. Can availability be used to synchronize SQL-based DBS files and associated logs?
Yes, sure, because we are not sending always the whole DBS file, because a DBS file maybe is 20, 30, 40 gig of size. So it doesn't make any sense to transfer always the whole file. What we are doing is we do a byte-level replacement. That means if something changed, we replace only the bytes inside the file. And we do the same for the log. But again, it's very important not to start the database engine on the target machine or on the backup machine. It's not possible, at least, because the environment is not set. But you can use, if you do a cut over or a fail over, then you can use a start script to start the application, the database engine, and you have no data loss. So we have also the crash recovery, so nothing is lost. The database is in a really stable condition and so on. So it's very, very usable for a SQL base.
Good. A couple of questions on the licensing part regarding Team Developer. When you basically migrate a Team Developer environment to the cloud, do you need to reactivate the TD Team Developer installation? Probably question for you, Martin.
Yeah, let me take that one. I think you need to reactivate it because the for the developer, the machine data is being used to create the local installation key. So yes, you need to activate it again. But that's not the case for the user, for the applications, because the Team Developer runtime doesn't need to be activated.
Okay, so it's only for the development environment.
Yeah.
Okay. And what about SQL base? Do you need a second license for a standby server? So when you are doing basically high availability on a standby server, do you need a second SQL based license for this standby server?
You need a second SQL-based license in the case when you run two servers simultaneously, which in the scenario that Helmut has described isn't the case. So if the first or the production server fails and the standby server takes over, then you can basically use the same SQL-based license because only one server at a time will be active.
Okay, good. Thanks a lot, Helmut and Martin. We are at the top of the hour, so I guess it's time to conclude this event. So thanks both for this very nice and comprehensive presentation. For the people attending this event, you can see on the screen, you can find more information about those products on our website. So opentext.com/ETX for the ETX product and opentext.com/migrate for the migrate product. So don't hesitate to go and visit our website. And of course, if you have any follow-up questions, you can reach out to us. So you can contact us directly or via our contact page on our website. Thanks all for attending. Have a good day and wishing you all the best. Thank you. Bye now.